Retreating 30th Tennessee, scrambling down the hill, scrambling up the hill. Meanwhile, the order's gone back down to Fort Donelson. We need some reinforcements. They'll bring the 50th Tennessee and the 49th Tennessee running up here, and they'll establish a new line on the ridge there, which is actually a higher ridge than this. It's actually a better defensive position. So if I'm laying out the outer works, I'll put skirmish lines here and put my main line of resistance on that ridge instead. So the Confederates have been chased off here. They're repulsed. Federals are repulsed trying to get up there. They try to sidle down the road towards the crossroads where we just came in, and a gunfight's going to break out down there that I'll talk about in just a moment. So this is what's going to stop Lauman and Cook's brigades from pursuing and breaking even further into the fort. Terrain. They couldn't see it. I mean, that ridge, you're not going to be able to see this ravine from that ridge. They had no idea this was here until they get up here and said, oh yeah, this is fabulous. Linear combat going down into there, trying to get up on, as guys are firing. And the Confederates that night will build a second line of trenches on top of the hill, the remains of which you can see as you drive into Fort Donelson on the highway.
So that's still clear cut, man?
Back in here, not so much. I mean, some trees taken out obviously for fuel, but for combat works, no. That's clear cut. And this is built during the night, so they've got what they've got. There will be less trees than what you see now, significantly less trees, because of the fuel for it. And you build your house out of wood, you need wood for your fires, fences, and back then you fenced your fields to keep the animals out and everybody free range their animals. Now you fence your animals in and let your cornfields be empty. A different whole thing. That's why at Shiloh, you could see clearly through the woods for hundreds of yards because of the free ranging. The animal will eat anything it can reach with its mouth. And all that underbrush is eaten up, so you could see clearly through the woods at Shiloh. Big difference where there's free ranging and not free ranging. So this stops the attack. Now, this will play into a couple of different things. First of all, when they stop the attack at Dudley's Hill, they've driven the Federals back the 2+ miles, opened up the 2 roads they want to escape, and everybody is ordered back to the trenches by Pillow in one of the classically stupid mistakes of the entire war. After winning a great victory, he manages to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here. Buckner's people come back led by the elite 2nd Kentucky, who down at the crossroads are marching along. All of a sudden they see guys in blue in the trenches that he occupied only hours earlier. So a big gunfight will break out down there. So you can see the movement on your map here. As you can see, as Buckner's people are falling back, they move down the road, they cross over to the crossroads where the visitor center is here, and here's the crossroads, here we are at stop 5, and that's where the fighting breaks out. And they're like, what the heck happened? Because when we left here, there were Confederates still holding this area, and now there's Union troops in this area. So what happens here, the lodgment that Charles Ferguson Smith's troops will make here will factor directly into the decisions made later that night by the Confederate High Command at the Rice House, who's Pillow's headquarters, in terms of whether we stay, go, surrender, whatever. That's the importance of what happened on this very spot, because it plays right into the mindset of the Confederate command structure.
So what do you think's most stupendous? Pillow's order to go back to the earthworks when he's got 2 roads open. In terms of sheer stupidity? Or the telegram to Johnson, we've won the day. I mean, well,
they had won the day.
Yeah.
And they were going to do what Johnson wanted to do, is evacuate the army. They could have gotten easily most of the army out there. Easily.
But in view of what he did, which one was the most stupid?
Stupid, that one. The second one, the ordering everybody back to the trenches. Yeah. We get over to Dudley's Hill. I'll talk about why that happens. Where some troops go out with their packs, some troops go out without their packs. There's not a lot of commander's intent that comes from the top down in terms of how we're going to fight this mission. Some of your Confederate officers only get the order that we're breaking out within about an hour to less before the breakout attack actually takes place. The original breakout is going to happen on the 14th. And they form the troops in the snow and the ice, and a bullet goes whizzing by one of Pillow's head. One of Pillow's heads. His head. This is a Hydra. Pillow was a Hydra. And he says, we've been, for a head, yeah, exactly, yeah. We've been seen, so break up the attack, and everybody goes back to the trenches. So they were going to try to get out on the 14th, which they definitely could have gotten everybody out on the 14th. No problem. And they still could have gotten just about everybody out on the 15th. We'll talk about that when we get down. Questions or discussion or anything like that?
We talked about the 2nd Iowa being dishonored because of there. Who determines who are going to be the skirmishers? Is that also?
That'll be your brigade commander.
But was it punishment for?
No, skirmish. No,
because I mean,
no, skirmish line's actually kind of a fun duty because you don't have to stand shoulder to shoulder. You get out there and mix it up.
Yeah, but you're the first one.
But you're also the first one that's shooting. Okay. All right. If you read Earl Hess's new book on the Atlanta campaign, he goes into big detail about how valuable and aggressive the Union skirmish lines are in that entire campaign, especially along Kennesaw Mountain. They're grabbing Confederate prisoners.
Is that the same thing as a picket line?
Yeah, same thing.
Are you saying you think the mistake Confederate
They should have put small forces here, the big line.
If you were to go there now, look at the county. Put artillery up there, it doesn't have.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I would have put it on
If they're thinking that far ahead, you need to tell them this way. But I mean, the study thing is. For our next stop, flip to map 6, please. First line works off to your right on the brow of this hill. Then as you make the turn, look back at the next ridge off to our left on the other side of the ravine, and you'll see that the line of works that they'll build the night of the 15th. Veterans will build those. See those lines of work? That's built the night of the 15th. Go to the right. Yeah, to the right. Yeah, those are the works they built the night of the 15th there. Goes on the ridge on the left-hand side as well.
Other than the fact I got your place, that's quite all right.
So this is where the fight when the 2nd Kentucky is coming back, and they realize there are Federals in their trenches, so a fight breaks out in this area.
Okay.
Now on map 8, which is what we're going to use here initially, locate where it says Visitor Center on the map. It's just south of stop number 1. We'll talk about Porter's Tennessee Battery and the 14th Missouri Infantry, better known as Bergey's Western Sharpshooters, who are the first sharpshooter unit in the United States Army of the Civil War. They predate Verdun's by several months. Yeah, just right there. Black belt there. Okay, across the road you see a cannon representing the site of Porter's Tennessee Battery. Porter's Battery had 1842 6-pound guns, and what we call in military jargon a salient angle, which means it's an angle jutting out into the line, which has good points and bad points. If you look at where it says A, right where it says Visitor Center, we're about at stop A, which means you can see how the line is jugging out, and from this position you can fire in 3 different directions, as opposed to a straight line of earthworks, you're only firing in one direction. The flip side of that is, it means the salient angle could be fired on in 3 different directions. So it depends on what you want to do. The mule shoe in Spotsylvania is a salient angle, and the Federals overran and captured the position. So there's risk and reward in a place like this. Now, if you look down to your right, if there were no trees here, we can see all the way to Hickman Creek and to where stop number 5 is. So that's what the guns of Porter's Battery can cover. So imagine if Cook and Lauman are going up against Smith's Division, going up against the 30th Tennessee, and you've got the 6 guns of the Porter's Battery firing down their flank. Cook's brigade is going to get shot to pieces on their left flank. It's not going to be, excuse me, on their right flank. It's not going to be a very pretty day for them. So designed to keep these guys face down in the dirt as much as possible is Bergey's Western Sharpshooters. They're originally raised in Missouri as the 14th Missouri, although they have an Ohio company, a Michigan company, and some Illinois companies in the regiment. And they're equipped with Dimmock hunting rifles made by the Dimmock Company of St. Louis, who will subcontract the manufacturing of these 1,000 weapons to equip the marksmen. They're going to be specially trained, unlike your line infantry soldier, in range estimation, backside adjustment, and sharpshooting tactics. These are the guys that do not have to fight shoulder to shoulder, and they're going to wear squirrel tails in their hats. And they're very proud of the fact that they're quite different from the other regiments here. Charles Smith, their regular line officer, doesn't particularly care for them because they don't drill and march and train in things like the regular infantry regiments do. The problem with having your Dimmock rifles made by a number of different sources is no 2 bullets from different Dimmocks or another Dimmock can fit your rifle. So if you lose your bullet mold, which you're equipped with, you're out of luck. Your weapon is now useless. You're given a bullet mold specific for your weapon. You're given a hunk of lead that you can melt down and make into your rounds, and then of course your powder. And basically as they deploy here, they're going to deploy off to our right, off to our front, and off to our left, to take advantage of the fact that they're firing on a salient angle where these guys can be fired on all three sides, and their whole mission is to keep Porter's Battery out of action as much as possible. Porter's Battery, because of the fire of the 14th Missouri, is going to suffer the highest level of casualties at Fort Donelson, 72%, which is huge for 1862. You don't get numbers like that until about 64, typically. And then you're eating dirt for the whole time, because you raise your head up, a guy with a Demic is going to kill you. So basically what they do every morning is they come back to their camps, they eat and rest up, and then in the morning the command is, boys, got your canteens, got your crackers, go hunt your holes. So these guys go out and look for sharpshooting positions. They'll climb trees, they'll make little foxholes to fire from, and their whole time is shooting at this position. So the bullets are flying left and right all over this way, and Porter's Battery are really taking it. Their horses are taking it, and men and horses are being killed and wounded all the time. To counter that, Pillow orders Forrest Cavalry, who's now been pushed back into the fort, to come in and offer counter battery, the equivalent of counter battery fire. Forrest has equipped his guys with Maynard carbines that he bought out of Louisville, by the way, and smuggled them out in barrels of flour. And the Federals knew that there were weapons being bought, but they could never catch them. And Forrest wrote the check himself. So he equips his guys with Colt Navy 6s and Maynard carbines, and as the story goes, Forrest is sitting here on a horse somewhere around this area, and a Demic rifle whizzes by his head. He sees the puff of smoke, he grabs a Maynard carbine, zeroes in on the smoke, pulls a trigger, and at 400 yards kills one of the sharpshooters because the guy falls out of the tree. That could be a little apocryphal, because I don't know if a Maynard can actually range out that far since it's a cavalry carbine and not a line infantry weapon, but it's still a great story. The Porter's Battery will evolve into probably the most famous Tennessee artillery battery of the war. One of the section commanders is a very young, about 20-year-old guy named Lieutenant John Morton. Morton will rise to become Forrest Chief of Artillery, and although I'm sure they saw each other, I doubt they ever talked to each other at the time at Fort Donelson. So this was the genesis of Morton's Tennessee Battery, which will wreak such havoc at Bryce's Crossroads and other places in Forrest Cavalry Corps. The 14th Missouri will later become the 66th Illinois, because the Illinois governor, Richard Yates, has more pull in Lincoln than the governor of Missouri does. And they will be one of the first Union regiments equipped with a 16-shot Henry repeating rifle, later in 1862, and they will carry them for the rest of the war, including in the Atlanta campaign. Any questions? You understand the importance of pinning this battery down for Lauman and Cook's attacks to be successful? Okay, we'll cross the road and we'll go over towards Dudley's Hill. Switch to map 6 for the next part, and I'll point out where it says on your map there, it says February 15th. That's where Buckner's troops will move to. The lines will cross the road, the trench line to that rise over there. That's where Graves Kentucky Battery was posted, is on that, as well as French's Battery. And they're basically going to cover the Indian Creek Valley by fire. They don't build any earthworks down in Indian Creek Valley. We'll have the 6 guns of Graves Battery on one side and the 6 guns of Manny's Battery on the other side. So any Federal move through that area will face some infantry support on the slopes of those hills, and then 12 guns. Needless to say, the Federals never launched an attack up the Indian Creek. No, you go straight. National Cemetery is off to the right, which is the site of the second fort built here after Fort Donelson was abandoned by the Federals. They'll still garrison the area, but they're not going to hold the original Confederate fort. The fort that's built up where the National Cemetery is now is the one constructed by the 83rd Illinois. It's on the same ridge. The first fort's at the City Cemetery. That was built by the 4 companies of the 71st Ohio, including my wife's great-great-great-grandfather. And in August of 1860,